U.S. ready to fight. Beijing issues, doesn't fear war. Statement as panic erupts in South China Sea. South China Sea tensions have increased in recent months as China warns it is ready for war over the disputed region. Beijing stoked fears in the region after a source close to the Chinese military said in August that an aircraft carrier killer and one other missile were launched into the South China Sea as a warning to the U.S. One of the missiles, a DF-26B, was launched from the northwestern province of Qinghai, while the other, a DF-21D, lifted off from Zhejiang, a province in the east of the country. The move represents a drastic escalation in an already fragile standoff between two of the world's biggest nuclear powers. Both missiles targeted areas between Hainan Province and the Paracel Islands according to Beijing's forces, areas contested by smaller nations such as Vietnam and Taiwan. In fact, China launched a series of ballistic missiles into the sea, with state-run media warning that China does not fear a war. It comes amid warnings that China's military is doubling down in its pursuit of dominance in the South China Sea. China has built up a significant military presence in the South China Sea as the country controversially tries to gain control in the region. Described by many as island fortresses, China has engulfed the South China Sea with man-made island bases and has been accused of forming them specifically for military purposes. The moving of its aircraft carriers, airstrips and weapons into the region has earned the cluster of bases the nickname the Great Wall of Sand. Photographs published by the Philippine Daily Inquirer showed cargo ships and supply vessels, which appeared to be delivering construction materials to the China-controlled islands. Other images show runways, hangars, control towers, helipads and radomes, as well as a series of multi-story buildings that China has built on reefs. The firing of missiles comes amid fears of reduced limits on nuclear warheads. The U.S. officially withdrew from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty on August 2, 2019, sparking fears that a new arms race could ensue. The 1987 Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty signed between Washington and the Soviet Union barred the use of the two nations' land-based ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and missile launchers. Kind of weaponry can hit targets from intermediate range, set at distances between 500 kilometers range and 5,500 kilometers range depending on the type of system. President Donald Trump announced in October 2018 that he wanted to pull the U.S. out of the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty or INF, accusing Moscow of violating the terms of the nuclear arms agreement. But the Kremlin has rejected the accusations, stressing that the scrapping of the INF treaty would force Russia to take measures to ensure its security. Now both countries are testing missile systems which would have previously been banned under the 1987 agreement. China, as seen in the South China Sea, also poses a threat. After President Trump withdrew from the accord, his then Defense Secretary Mark Esper told reporters that he wanted to counter China's massive missile inventory sooner rather than later. China has been warned it does not have the power to claim the disputed South China Sea as theirs, according to an expert. China claims it has historic right of ownership to almost the entire South China Sea, despite a 2016 international arbitration ruling saying Beijing's claim had no legal basis under international law. But the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Taiwan and Brunei also have overlapping claims to parts of it. DWF's head of transport, Jonathan Moss, has explained China does not have the right to claim islands in the waters as its own. When asked whether China does have a right over the disputed waters, Mr. Moss say not according to the judgment by the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague. They derived the judgment from the provisions of UNCLOS, which is the statute which was brought into force in December 1982. Certainly, if you look at the judgment, which is over 100 pages long, it suggests that China doesn't have the right to do that. Mr. Moss also noted there is a real risk of further conflict in the waters. He said he think there's definitely a risk of all-out conflict. Have been pockets of conflict before. Going back about 20 years, there was a naval battle where 3 Chinese vessels were engaged with the Philippines Navy gunboats. There's definitely the risk of isolated incidents, and as we know, a string of isolated incidents can lead to major conflict. It comes as 2 U.S. Air Force B-1B bombers took off from Guam and headed west over the Pacific Ocean to the hotly contested South China Sea. The sleek jets made a low-level pass over the aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan and its escorting fleet, which was exercising nearby in the Philippine Sea, according to images released by the U.S. military. The operation was part of the Trump administration's intensifying challenge to China's ruling Communist Party and its sweeping territorial claims over one of the world's most important strategic waterways. While senior Trump officials launched diplomatic and rhetorical broadsides at Beijing, the U.S. Defense Department is turning to the firepower of its heavily armed, long-range bombers as it seeks to counter Beijing's bid to control the seas off the Chinese coast. Since late January, American B-1B and B-52 bombers, usually operating in pairs, have flown about 20 missions over key waterways, including the South China Sea, the East China Sea, and the Sea of Japan, according to accounts of these flights from U.S. Air Force statements and official social media posts. These missions, military analysts say, are designed to send a crystal-clear signal. The United States can threaten China's fleet and Chinese land targets at any time, from distant bases, without having to move America's aircraft carriers and other expensive surface warships within range of Beijing's massive arsenal of missiles. In this response to the growing power of China's military, the Pentagon has combined some of its oldest weapons with some of its newest, Cold War-era bombers and cutting-edge, stealthy missiles.